Story. I was late one night with my friend. We were driving too fast down a slick highway and spun out. Before we hit the wall, the only coherent thought I had was, "You're not going to die." Closest thing I've had to divine influence or experience. I don't think I'll ever be sure it wasn't my brain just trying to be rational in an incredibly intense situation. Next one. Well, not much of a believer. Duh, this is Reddit after all. But there is one event in particular that has always kind of bugged me. The night before my grandmother died, I had a dream that I was standing at her grave. Mind you, we had absolutely no idea that she would pass the next day. It was a sudden death. Plus, I know it wasn't me imagining it, that I dreamt it, because I told my mother about the dream a few hours later, before we found out that she'd been up to the hospital. Some kind of premonition. It happens. When I was younger, I thought I talked to God. Maybe I did. His voice was a mix of Tupac and Sean Connery. I'm not joking. I would pray to him daily and he would respond. I'm not schizophrenic. Haven't prayed for a long time. Not sure if he still talks back. The next story was, I'm not even sure it was God, but I actually heard the story. It could be my imagination, the imaginations of a bored 6-year-old, but it was a strange event that I had when I was young. Again, sorry for the dogs. It was it was 7 a.m. and I was in school. I was in the school bus heading to school. The school bus in our country is a lot smaller than the yellow school bus. It looks somewhat exactly like the bus in the picture. I don't have the picture here, but a bit smaller and features a small side folding car with a chair with no seatbelt. There was no obstacles to that chair as there was a 2 or 3 meter gap between the chair and the front window. So, anyways, I was sitting in the chair, minding my own business. Everything was normal when I had this thought that the bus was going to crash head into a parked car. The strange thing is, the car was 20 or so meters away, and the driver was driving at a snail's pace, so there was about 10 seconds or so before the accident was going to happen. Nobody would think anything would happen. It was then that I heard a strange conversation in my head asking me to turn around and hold onto the back of my chair as hard as I could, since my chair had no seatbelt. As I did as I was told, with a generous few seconds or so left before the crash, to which other classmates and teachers gave me a weird look as to ask why I was doing this. Then the crash happened. Most of my classmates banged their heads against the seat in front of them, and thankfully most went with only minor injuries. Turns out the driver didn't get enough sleep, and that's why we crashed. The conversation, however, is something I still remember vividly. It was almost playful, and the voice I heard say it was one that sounded like my mom, or perhaps angelic. It went like this: "Hey, Morphinite, how about we play a game?" "Okay, what should we play?" "I want you to imagine that we are in a spaceship and this is going to have a crash, so I want you to hug onto your chair and brace for impact." I did just that. Not Had I not held onto the chair, I would have flown into the window and probably suffered the most injuries out of all the people on the bus. I know it's not the most divine of events, but it is something I can't explain. That's pretty, a lot going on there. They replied with, "He needed you around longer." There's this idea in Christianity called common grace. No matter who you are or what you believe in, God is still active in your life, pushing you towards and away from certain things. You can choose to ignore it, but the majority of the time it is our benefit to comply. Sounds like you did. So the next story is, one night around 2 years ago, I was reading in my bed and I swear that I received a phone call from God. I slept on a bunk bed and I vividly remember reaching for my phone and it was on the shelf nearby. "This is God. Are you name?" I was confused, as no one would have a reason to call me so late at night. I also didn't recognize the voice. It almost sounded like my own. I asked, "What? Who is this?" The speaker on the phone kept on repeating, "Is this blank? Is this blank?" So I kept on repeating, "What? Who is this?" This lasted for around 5 to 10 seconds, and then they hung up. I checked my call history. There was no record at all, no number to call back, and it almost seems too surreal now. But I am certain that it happened. Someone replied with, "It was probably a dream." And they replied with, "Yes, I've had dreams where I thought that it was so real that I woke up very confused about what was reality. Perhaps the case, perhaps not." My parents told me that when I was like 1 year old, I randomly started laughing at the ceiling and playing with the air. I only ever did this once. It is not long. It was not long before this, a few hours, that my grandmother had passed away. Well, maybe she came to see you. You never know. Since there has been seem to be a few about car crashes, I'll post my story. It was just after the post-graduation party that my town holds for graduating high schoolers. I was up all night and was driving my friends to get breakfast. The roads were that type of slick that people warn you about, and the car was full of people. I was following a friend who was driving aggressively when my car started sliding out of control. I tried to correct and ended up sliding, switching directions 2 or 3 times before the car started traveling backwards. I hit the only telephone pole that would have saved me from careening down a small drop off, maybe 7 to 10 feet. And the fact that I hit the pole going backwards meant that the passengers who were in the back seat and did not have their seatbelts on were forced backward into the seat rather than through the front window or elsewhere. Everyone walked away unharmed, except for the one who had a small cut. Like others have said, I'm not sure this was God's divine intervention on my last high school gathering, but it was nothing short of a miracle in my mind. I often wonder how different my life would have been if I'd killed someone by hitting something going forward or careening off the road and down into that ditch. I never would have forgiven myself. Next story. Not me, but this happened to someone I know. This man was on his deathbed, dying from cancer. His 2-year-old granddaughter asked, "Papa is sick, huh?" And her grandmother answered yes. Then she said, "It's okay. Jesus is coming for him tomorrow." And the next day he died. It was kind of spooky. Yeah, that would kind of freak a lot of people out, I can't imagine. Okay, so next story. I'm hanging out with my friend sometime after high school, and he's trying to tell me the idea of going to Canada for college with him. I'm having nothing to do with it. No way. While my friend drones on, this very calm but stern voice in my head, alarmingly distinct from my inner monologue, says, "You're going to Canada." I think back, okay, I really don't want to. What if I don't? The voice replies something to the effect of, "You can stay, but you really won't like it." And I get this sort of camera flash of an image feeling idea in my head of things, and whether personal or otherwise, going very badly, and this sort of rush of impending doom hits me. All of this happens in about 3 to 5 seconds. While my buddy is still yammering on about the pros and cons of the idea, he had no idea anything has happened. Still, to this day. So I figure, fuck it, why not? It'll be cheaper than anywhere I can go, and as the very least, it'll be an adventure. Within 2 weeks, I had applied, been accepted, and my student loans had come through. A few weeks later, we pack up and head off. Our classes start the first week of September of 2001. Been there ever since. Someone asked, how would 9/11 have affected you if you'd stayed? And they replied with, it's hard to say. I think in some respects it is something that is still playing out today as we see the effects those events have had on the day-to-day life in the States. More personally, at the time, my parents were on a trip to New York when it happened. It was a trip I likely would have been on and still lived as I had still lived at home. They weren't in the city when it happened, but that was because they had been there before, and for them, it was a been there, done that sort of thing. So I haven't bothered. I never have. So it was probable that we never would have gone simply for my sake. For me, it's one of those if a butterfly flaps its wings sort of things. What variables could have created what outcomes? Sounds like, there's probably something a little more personal there. And your mind always goes to that sort of thing. But just something out there was telling you this is going to be a better life. So good for you. I'm glad it's working out. And continued with the best of luck. The next story is I've had a couple of encounters, not with God per se, but definitely supernatural beings. The first was when I was 10. I was at a conference with my family at a really nice beachfront hotel in northern Brazil. I was swimming in the ocean with another kid at the conference who was probably about 14 at the time. The current was strong and we wanted to stay within a reasonable distance from the hotel. So naturally, we were fighting the current, not knowing any better. Eventually, little 10-year-old me was exhausted and couldn't even make my way to the shore. The other kid I was with was bigger and was able to fight the current better than I, but really hadn't noticed that I wasn't near to him anymore. I started drifting out further and further, unable to breathe, swallowing water, etc. All of a sudden, this guy runs into the water, picks me up, and before I know it, we are on the shore. I cough up a lot of water I had swallowed, and I just turned to thank him. He was just gone. The beach was straight and pretty flat, so he didn't just run up a dune or something. He just disappeared. I've always rationalized it that he was an angel. The second time, I was driving with my friend through a blizzard in the middle of February in Michigan. He's a crazy driver and was being a dumbass going 55 to 60 in a Jetta in a blizzard. His tire caught a snowdrift close to the median of the road, which spun us out and put us up on the median, facing traffic and stuck in about 2 feet of snow. My friend tried reversing out of the snow, but to no avail. I was about to get out and try to help push us out when I heard a knock on my door, which was half buried in snow. It was this older guy, probably mid-50s, wearing a windbreaker and jeans, wearing headphones. He asked me if we needed a little push. I got out and tried to discuss a game plan with him, which he responded to, "I can't hear you. I have headphones on." My buddy put his car in reverse, and this mysterious dude barely touched the thing, and it was free. I thanked him, hopped back in the car, and turned to thank him again, but he was gone. Again, there was nowhere that he could have gotten to that I couldn't have seen. My friend looked for him too, but we didn't see him anywhere. We both drove the rest of the way to the house, awestruck. Both accounts give me chills till this day. And someone replied and asked, was this the same guy in both stories? And he said, no, the first guy was bald and was in excellent shape. The second guy was older and wore glasses. That's the only details that I could remember. Pretty interesting. That's an interesting, you got lucky twice at least. So glad you're still with us and hope things are going well for you. That's going to be the end of this video, but we're going to be doing some more. So check out the next one when it comes out. And thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for liking, subscribing, commenting, sharing, whatever you're doing. Even if you're not doing any of those things, you're still here and I appreciate it. And I will see you next time. Bye. Hello there, welcome back to another video. I am Ramona, and today's little video is going to be asked on the Ask Reddit question. Do you believe you've had an encounter with God? If so, what happened? And it asked that these were serious replies only, so get ready for some serious stuff, hopefully. Okay, so the first story is, may not be a God, but I asked my best friend since 7th grade who died to help me get over the fact that he died. I got a job and my parents started talking to me in the following week. A few months later, I was sitting in my car thinking about him, and I say, show me a sign that you are here with me. I started to cry, and then I hear raindrops on the roof of my car. I stop crying a few minutes after, and so does the rain. I get out, and there are a lot of raindrops on my car. I walk over to my dad's car, which is next to me. It is bone dry. I go to my brother's car to the right of me, bone dry. This is one of the strangest events of my life. I have always been nervous to share that. I'm glad you did, though. They edited and said, I wanted everyone to know that I am not religious, but I am not an atheist. I do not believe that God did this in any way. And there's a reply that says, wow, there's a sign if I ever saw one. I would have probably freaked out. Also, sorry to hear about your friend. Hope you're doing better these days. Many are saying that if you were just searching for a sign, anything to comfort you. Maybe this is the case, and I don't personally believe in God, but it is your perception of the events that counts. And I hope it made your loss a little easier. Next one is, I will probably get downvoted because Reddit hates religion. It's true or not, but here it comes. It absolutely does not matter whether or not there is a God, or whether that was your friend responding to you or not. It's about what you believe and what makes you happy, your reality. I am not religious, which I find a little unfortunate. I wish I believed in a higher power, a God, the afterlife, and I'll tell you why. My uncle passed away last Friday due to a sudden cerebral hemorrhage. I'm having a hard time because I loved my uncle. But for my grandparents, however, it would be much worse. They've lost their child. They are sad, of course, but something they said made me feel happy and fuzzy inside. My nephew posted a poem about his dad on Facebook, stating that he had many questions left to ask, where my granddad responded to, Jeff, very moving. We also have our questions. We are comforted that he may live with God now. Grandma and Grandpa. I teared up reading this, how great it was. It didn't even matter whether or not there was a God or not in their reality, but they do choose to believe that now he is with God, and it is an utter great feeling of comfort. In a few years' times, they will be by his side with God in their reality. What I'm trying to say that it absolutely does not matter what caused the rain. If you believe it was your friends responding to you, then it was your friend. This is your reality. You may believe this, and you can't be proven otherwise. If this thought comforts you, then stick with that thought. Next reply was, I had a similar experience. My grandfather's nickname was Owl. He passed away a few years ago. I missed him dearly and still do. One night I was in my bedroom crying, and I was like, I said, please just let me know that if you're here or if you're okay. Less than a minute later, an owl was perched on a branch in a tree only a few inches away from my window. Owls are very rarely seen and heard in my area. It began to hoot. I could not believe it and started to record it. I still have the recording. And every so often now, I say, I wish you could come visit me somehow. Sure enough, an owl would be outside my window that night, hooting away. After 3 or 4 times, I really couldn't think of it as coincidence. Not anymore. But still somewhat skeptical, but that could be one hell of a coincidence. I moved to the suburbs about a year ago. Owls are even more of a rarity out here, but I still get a visitor every so often, right outside my window, like always. See, that's a comforting thought. Know that your family member still, after all this time, wants to comfort you. Hopefully, at some point, you'll be able to move on and have the comfort you need without those signs. The next story was, I'm wary to post this because, well, it's Reddit and such things often get downvoted to oblivion. But it is a topic of the post, so we were in our high school senior trip to South Padre Island, walking along the beach with 2 or 3 other guys from my class, when we saw another classmate out in the ocean crying for help. I naturally think, let's go, guys, and head out towards him. But when I arrived and turned around, the guys I was with were no longer there to be found. He was stuck in the undertow, and now so was I. I'd never had any knowledge or training on it, and I didn't know how best to deal with it. So I concentrated on keeping the guy, Tim, above the water. The reality is that I am not a strong swimmer. Tim was tired before I went out, and soon enough, so was I. That area of the beach had a fence very near to the water, so there was no one around sunning. At that moment, no one was walking around either. Time ticked on, and we both struggled to stay above the waves, gasping for breath, burning muscles and swallowing gobs of water. The prospect of drowning became very real to both of us. In exhaustion, we had become desperate. I cried out, God help us. Tim must have thought it was a good idea and did the same. Immediately after that, though, there was this wall disappeared and we suddenly walked up onto the shore. We walked back to our hotel in silence, drank some salt-free water in one of our rooms, and never spoke about it again. And someone wanted clarification. Sorry, I'm really confused here. You guys were pulled out of the sea and then a wall disappeared? What do you mean by that? I think he means they were swimming against a current, and when they said, God help us, the current went away and they eased into the shore. They were struggling to swim against a strong current, but after calling for help from God, they found it far easier to return to shore. That's how I interpret it anyway. Sounds good enough, because I don't think the original replier came back. Someone else replied with, I hope you called out to those other assholes for leaving you and your friend drown. Or did they at least go get help? No reply there. We don't know. So the next story was, when I was in high school, a friend of mine, a guy I knew and talked to periodically, was killed in a car accident. He was not wearing a seatbelt and was killed. A few days later, I was driving by where the scene of the accident took place. I was a teenager who didn't like to wear his seatbelt at the time either. I know, stupid of me. Well, as soon as I passed by there where the accident took place, my passenger seatbelt started to tap and hit the side of the door. My windows were down, so maybe it was just the wind, but I was driving on a straight road, and that was the only time that it ever happened to me that I can recall. It was really strange and could not grasp what had just happened. From that day forward, I have always worn my seatbelt when I drive. God or not, I found this to be a life-changing encounter for me. And they replied with, something like this will cause you to notice the rattle you didn't notice before. And yes, wear a seatbelt. Seen too many accidents to not be paranoid of crazy other drivers. Let's hope your friend's terrible accident helps save many lives by encouraging them. Likewise. I want to take a moment and thank the subscribers that I have. I really do appreciate it. A few of you have started to subscribe to my channel, and I really appreciate it. Thanks for the likes. Thanks for the comments. I try to respond to them all. But just wanted to take a moment and say thanks. On to the next story. I'm not a particularly religious person, but there have been a few instances where I really felt like a higher being was involved. When I was younger, I had this uncle who would always scold me for shit. I was a fucking asshole. Parents weren't around much, and he was one of the few adults in my life. Anyways, one day I got really pissed off at him, and before I went to bed, I hoped he would get a heart attack. The next day, I wake up to the sound of my mom crying on the phone. My uncle had a heart attack at work and was at the hospital. No one in our family had ever had heart problems. It felt it felt like complete shit. I ran back down to my room and prayed that he would be okay. Tears running down my face. A couple hours later, we got a call back from the hospital saying that he was going to be okay. We later found out that after my uncle had a heart attack, his coworker was sending him to one of the best private hospitals in my city. But on the way there, he missed a turn and had to go to a normal government hospital instead, as going back would take too long. Turns out the hospital they ended up going to was specialized in heart surgery, and that was the best equipment out to handle the heart attack patients. That turn quite possibly could have meant life or death for him. That day really changed me. It made me realize how fucking bad I treat the people around me. I'd like to think I've become a better person since then. Well, at least you're self-aware. If nothing else, you can always work on that. That would be quite terrifying to feel that you willed something like that on somebody. Don't know if it's possible or not, but hell of a feeling. Not sure about God, but I had a cousin pass away when he was about 18 months, and our whole family has seen white feathers that randomly fall and disappear. It'll happen in a car or a house or outside, and you can never find the damn feather. Shit's freaky. There's a lot of situations. I know some people who work for people that believe in that stuff, and I don't necessarily disbelieve it, but anyway. So the reply was, "Wow, that would really freak me out. Have you ever grabbed one of the feathers or something, and do they disappear before you get the chance? What makes this creepier is that it happens to the whole family. Hope your family is coping with the loss. I can't imagine how hard it would be for your aunt and uncle." And they've replied with, "None of us have ever been able to grab one, and it brought our whole family closer together for sure." See, there's a positive influence right there, which you can't ask for more than that. In such a terrible situation, being able to find something positive is essential. Next story. I have no clue what it was, but I should have died and I didn't. I was about 10 and my mom was driving me to school on a super freezing winter morning. It had snowed during the night, and when I got super cold, so black ice had formed all around the roads. The ramp to get off the highway led to an overpass, and so it was inclining. She got about halfway up the ramp. She hit a patch of ice and started swerving everywhere. She was going too fast to control the car, so there was nothing she could do as we started to head towards the guardrail, going at a speed that would surely send us over. All of a sudden, our car came out of a dead stop, just before it was about to hit the rail. We were still going too fast and so out of control. The fact that we stopped so immediately and right before we hit the rail makes no sense. I would like to think that it was God or whatever out there deciding it wasn't our time. It sounds like it. I mean, there's coincidence and there's accidents and there's luck, but sounds like something was out there watching for you guys. Next story. Aside from when I came to faith and I feel like I have heard his voice through all of my body, not just my ears, he's been pretty apparent in the small things. I've had no crazy life or death experiences like others in this thread. For instance, I go to college in Reno. One of my favorite bands is playing downtown in San Francisco. I started looking up Greyhound fares and buying tickets, but this was earlier in the week and I wasn't sure if I'd be able to make it. But I just kind of kept praying for it to happen and for me to get all my homework done so that I could go, and everything worked out better than I thought it could. The guys actually called me out from the stage. One hugged me up on stage, and I got to eat dinner with them after the concert. Totally down-to-earth, humble guys. It was amazing. You can read this just as pure coincidence, but I also see it from that side too. God is apparent in all those little times when that seem like things can't work and then do incredibly. Then somebody wanted to know, who is the band? And it was Beautiful Eulogy. Heard of them? Yes, I have. Some really cool stuff. Never heard of them. But glad it worked out for you.